the book about the history of Warsaw, of this city, where my father don't have a street. But he's not good enough to have a street in Warsaw. Do you want to know the truth?
Yes.
Okay, there is a director, Roman Polanski. If you are a piece of wood, you're the best actor also. But I told Brody that he will get Oscar for this movie.
Władysław Szpilman, the pianist, became a world-famous figure when his remarkable book about his life story hit the world and became a bestseller. It's now been translated into 42 languages. The film made by Roman Polanski about his life also became an incredible hit, winning 3 Oscars and dozens of other awards. His life has become synonymous with the tragedy of Poland's Jews. He, along with his family and hundreds of thousands of other people, were trapped in the Warsaw Ghetto. Surviving, they were sadly sent to Treblinka, and he was saved by just a whisker. He then had to endure living in hiding in Warsaw through the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the Warsaw Uprising, and then beyond, when the city was empty, along with hundreds of other so-called Robinson Crusoes. By an amazing chance, Władysław Szpilman survived. And yet, his story wouldn't be known by the world if it wasn't for one remarkable moment, when his son Andrzej, at 13 years old or so, picked up the book that Szpilman had wrote about his life as a form of therapy and started reading through it. We are more than honoured that today we have Władysław Szpilman's son, Andrzej Szpilman, with us today. Andrzej, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for coming.
I'd like you to go back to that exact moment when you picked the book from the shelf. Can you tell us? It must have been really extraordinary.
It was a strange moment because, you know, I read this book and I didn't really accept that it is the story of my father. I was reading this book and was surprised that my father wrote the book, and this is a very strong story. But I thought it's a Roman. I couldn't imagine it is his story. And I didn't even want to be my story because it was, I believe, 1968. It was a very special time in Polish history when, after the fraction fate in the party, communistic party, we call it communistic party, which was not communistic, but which was pro-Sovietic regime. So during this phase there was an idea of the opposition of governing people to use the anti-Semitic paroles to win the fight. So the government reacted, inventing the same paroles, and the whole situation started to be anti-Semitic at all. In the result, 20,000 Jewish people, mostly intellectuals, professors, people working for the culture, for the movies, for the music, left Poland.
Yes.
Not left, was expelled, and in this time, this atmosphere was also, I felt this, and I wasn't really happy to accept that I am Jewish.
Had you talked about that before? Or because
no,
in the book at the start you mentioned you haven't
forward. There was no these
forward.
questions before.
So he never talked about...
No, there was no these questions between the people. There was no these questions in our family. There was no reason. There was no anti-Semitism, and I was not confronted with this. So, 68, I remember I took the book to the school, and the teacher saw this book in my hands and said, "Your father wrote a book. May you read some parts from this book?" She wanted to use the time to smoke the cigarette. So she made a break and asked me to read some parts of the book. And I was reading the book in the class, in front of these young people, and I came to the moment when the Germans catched my father, his brother and his father on the street and wanted to kill them. And the first question of Germans was, "Are you Jewish?" And this was the moment I stopped reading, didn't say it. And then I understood that I am part of the story. But let me tell you, I never had any anti-Semitic experiences later. It was once or two times in my life, some incidents in Poland. So it was not my subject. Then I moved to Germany. I didn't want to move to Germany. I was on my way to the Harvard. I want to study in the States. So, you know, something happened to me. I met the girl. This very strange story. This time it was a German girl, so I decided to stay in Hamburg. So I stayed in Hamburg, and I got the job in the hospital and later in the university as a high school assistant professor. So, you know, when you are 5 years working for the university, you get more and more Germany, and there you have more and more possibilities to stay there and wish. So I stayed there. Later I opened my own office, and in this office I had the flat over the office where I had my music studio. As I composed or did some production in Poland before I left, I don't know if you know the song Gandzia by Oddział Zamknięty. So this is, I think this is a song, this production which was sold 1 million times on the records, and this is quite popular after 40 years. So I did some music for the movies, for the ballet and whatever, and some songs composed before. So I had my studio in the same building as my office, dental office. And I was sitting in a very special place, where was Film Institute on the corner. There was redaction of Spiegelstein and a lot of actors, and I don't want to tell the famous names of the people who was my patients, because it is not even possible. But one of them, and this is known in whole world, was Wolf Biermann, who was a German Jacek Kaczmarski. He was a singing poet, very famous, with a very interesting life story, which I cannot even now tell it to you, because it is too long and complicated. Anyway, he was a singer, and I started to produce in my studio his music. And I think we did 8 CDs, and 25 CDs I reconstructed and whatever. One of them was based on the poem of Itzhak Katzenelson. Itzhak Katzenelson was a very important Jewish Polish poet from Warsaw Ghetto, who later came to the camp in Bittel through the actions of Hotel Polski. This is not very well known story. And he wrote the poem about the murdered Jewish nation. This book was translated into German by Wolf Biermann. He was working on this book, and he was confronted with a real situation in Warsaw Ghetto. And I said, if you want, and he asked me to tell him more. And I said, okay, I'll bring you a book, you say it's a collection of fragments of different pieces of literature about the Warsaw Ghetto. And there was 2 or 3 parts of the book of my father inside, translated into German in the 80s. So I brought this to him, and he said, what? Your father wrote a book about this time. I want to read it in whole. And I say, no, chance I don't have any translation. It is a small part you have. You need, it would be enough for you. It should be enough to get this impression what happened there. And you have there Naukowska. You have this and this. A lot of it was, you know, it was a choice of really most important pieces of Polish literary works. And so, in between, I had some friends, and they told me, the book, really, you have this book, the story is very strong. You know, I know the agent, literary agent in London. Go there. I said, okay. So we did an appointment next week, and in between they got me also to get in touch with one of the biggest movie producers of the world. The man who produced Terminator, Last Emperor, 8.5 and many films, many movies, Platoon. So one of the biggest producers from Hollywood. So as I came to London, I met three people. I met my agent. Then I met a girl looking at her 30s, very nice, was sitting with my agent, on opposite, and my agent said, okay, you are the first. I said, no, ladies first. Because I thought when I be the second, I have more time. So I came as a second, and he told me, no, this lady, she wrote the book, you know, very good book for children. I say, you do also the children. This is different story. I know, but this book will be very important in whole world. Children book? Yes, you will see. This was later, as I learned, Harry Potter.
J.K. Rowling.
And yes, and the lady was very nice, and you know, it was nice to meet her, but so he took my book, this book of my father, of course, but I say the book which I came with, and he accepted this, but he gave it to the specialist to check, because he cannot speak Polish. So he asked, and the answer was, the book has no chance on the market. And the German, no, that was like, I said, okay, let's wait for the German version. And the German publisher said, we cannot print it. And I got sick of it. So I already talked 5 hours to this American producer. And he told me, let's wait for the American book or English book, and then I will take it, and we have to make the movie, because it is a very healing story. And so as I learned that there's no chance for this book to be printed, believe me, I sat down. It was in September. Until December, I was working every day on the German text. I did it again. The translator, German translator, this sick lady, said always to the publisher, I will take my name from this book, and I will make you the process. And I answered, no, it is not me doing the book, my father. You know, he speaks perfectly German, and he's working on the book. So it is, you know, from juristic point of view, it is correct. So she couldn't stop the book, did nothing. I was working on the book, and on the end, we got very good critics as the book came out. And what happened to the lady? She came to the premiere, she kissed me and said, darling, I got this book 2 days ago. I read whole night and was crying. It is so beautiful, thank you. It was this translator who said, I will take my name off. Yeah. 2 weeks later, she was nominated to the Prize of Translators. And I asked her, Mrs. Wolf, who will get this prize, me or you?
The book itself, I've only read the English version, never the Polish, but I remember reading it 20 years ago now, and it really sat with me, and then the film as well. And I'm sure you've had that reaction from many people. Your father, and I forgot to mention this at the start, was a very notable composer and light music composer, and just so much work, it's unbelievable. He
and
clearly...
a pianist. He was working, after he stopped his career and working as a composer, in 1963, he created the chamber music group, and they gave up to 1,500 to 2,000 concerts all over the world. And he was looking very carefully not to be known with it in Poland. So they were playing 3 tours, 70 concerts in the United States, Asia, South America many times. Every year, twice Europe. So they played around the world, and he asked also always his friends, the journalists, not to write about it in Poland because of jealousy.
Yes. So but Andrzej, he wasn't just a great composer and a great pianist and an amazing man. He was clearly quite a good writer.
The story is different. I tell you the story. He was not only composer of the light music. We discovered a lot of symphonic works who will be played all over the world, in different places. I tell you, Marta Argerich in her festival took his symphonic work, piano concertino. So he was doing things, but was not running around with it. So we didn't even know at home what is he really doing. But the truth is, of course, I knew more about his work from the people on the street who were singing me his songs than from home. What was with this book? This book is not a written book as it is. The story is my father went out the ruins totally crushed, without almost possibility to leave. And his friend, Gregor Fitterberg, told him, Vladi, if you want to leave, you have to do the psychological therapy or write down your diary. So my father started to write his diaries. And some of them he dictated to his secretary, which was typing this in the... So there was very specific notes, almost ready book. As he met in Polish radio, Jerzy Waldorf. Jerzy Waldorf was introduced to Polish radio by Roman Jasiński, who gave his word that Jerzy Waldorf during the war was okay, because Jerzy Waldorf was very famous before the war as an anti-Semite, member of National Party. And so there was some problem. He got the problems after the war because the authorities knew his past. And they said, no way the man will be a journalist in Poland. So he decided, he started to work in the radio as a specialist for the tapes, not as a journalist, but as an inspector, help, let's say some kind of help, serviceman. And at the same time, the friend of my father said, Vladi, give him the book. He can do the reduction, so let's say elaborating or compose it to the book as a redactor, as a
editor of types.
Editor, yes. Yep. So the book was published, even my father was not there, but it was published, Władysław Szpilman, Death of the City.
Yes.
Elaborated by Jerzy Waldorf. This is what was said, written, you can read it in this book. So we did the agreement on the end that the first version of this book was elaborated by Jerzy Waldorf. And he was responsible for this book, and I think it was, of course, important part in creating of this work. But what was on the end, this book was created, had some form, got some form, but the language was terrible. And what I did was to produce this book in the modern language, which is very important for promotion and propagation of this book between the young people. And let's say this book shouldn't be the book for the old people, but I want the young Nazis to read this book, because we need to educate them, the people who are not clear in the head what happened on the Polish territory during the war, should read this book, because this is not the book only about the story and history of Polish Jews, but this is a book about the history of Polish nation.
And Warsaw as well.
And the book about the history of Warsaw, of this city, where my father don't have a street. After he wrote this, he composed hundreds of songs about Warsaw. His world-famous group was calling Warsaw Piano Quintet, but he's not good enough to have a street in Warsaw. Somebody told me that it is because of anti-Semitism in the house of government, Warsaw government, but I can't believe it, but it could be the reason.
Well, Andrzej, coming back to that moment when you picked the book up, it was a loose sheets,
No,
or
it was a printed book.
It was a printed book at that
Yes.
stage. So, although the book has a remarkable arc to it, you know, looking at it from a story, it's really extraordinary, and it's his story, but it's also so symbolic of everything that happened, because he so brilliantly describes the horror of the ghetto.
This is because of my father. Because you didn't know my father in person. You have to know this person. My father was a very funny person. He came from his tours all over the world, came over, asked friends to come, and you know, this was his house. Let's say we had a lot of friends, and let's say our family, I believe that my family was the people who saved his life. We had a lot of composers. Lutosławski was his friend. All these friends I knew, nobody, even Lutosławski was collecting money from my father during the war, playing with Sumińska and Panownik. So nobody was even touching the story of the war. Lewicki, all these people you know from the book. And what happens, Bogucka and Bogucki, you see them in the movie.
Yes.
These people never talked about this. I tell you, the friend of us was Helena Merenholz. She was what I didn't know, because I was visiting her home, and there was a David Stern. But it was not a David Stern. It was, you know, somebody bought her in the Yarmark, the stand of the sheriff. But you know, these simple people didn't know that the sheriff's stand has 5 arms. This one had 6 arms, like a Jewish stand, David stand. So it was hanging on the wall, and say nothing. I was asking myself, why does she have a sheriff's stand or star on the wall? What is going on? It's a joke. As she died, I learned that she was a teacher. She was not the teacher, but she was caring for the children in the house of Jan Korczak, Janusz, in this
orphanage. Yes.
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 So then I saw the movie with her, documentary, and she said, I'm very old, and maybe these days I will die. And believe me, I'm happy that I will die. It will be the first time I don't hear the cry of the children anymore. So, she was part of our family. No one word about ghetto. I don't know how my father learned her. My father played in the ghetto on 2 pianos with Goldfeder. There was no place in the ghetto, only in orphanage of Janusz Korczak, where was 2 pianos. So they went there every day to practice, and they met first time there with Helena Mearenholz. So you know how connected is this time of the war with this story. No one word at home. So this team was not existing at home. That's why I told you that one interview between me, my father, and the journalist was so important. The question, to talk or not, and there's a big distance between parents and children, and this is not accidental. That there are groups all over the world of children of Holocaust victims. Because these children are living with the trauma which was transferred from the parents to the children.
And that's exactly what I want to ask you about, because at 13 you suddenly discover this story that you had up until then no idea about, and that's common for many trauma survivors not to talk about the things they've been through. But you face a traumatic experience yourself.
But I never thought that this story could be of importance for other people. I tell you, even there was in the 60s, somebody wanted to reprint this. And Arthur Rubinstein asked many different houses to print the book. There was no interest, and maybe this book was not good enough. As I told you, I got the problems, and so I reworked this book again.
Yes.
But later, in the 70s, the friend of us in Germany, we even didn't talk about, but he was asking some publishers to print the book. No, it was dismissed. The importance of this book started for me as my friend started to work on the poem of Itzhak Katzenelson. And he told me that this story is very significant and very special, and you have to print and you have to work on it, because I'm dentist and I was working, let's say, as journalist, but to produce the book on this level, for me, in not my language, was a terrible responsibility. And I did it. But you know, it was not a knowledge. It was the power of soul. I did it, and the power which I got was not from this earth. As you read the book, English translation, you know this is a wonderful language, a very strong book.
Yes.
And this is my work. I'm not in the front of it because it was not important. Important is the story, not the author.
I want to come on to the film then. So you talked about this producer coming. When did Roman Polanski come onto the scene? He's such a...
This producer, John Daly, wanted to make this movie, but what happened? As the book started to be mostly important book, was on every best books of the year lists in the world. Came out in the States, in England, and then my agent said, okay, now we are ready to do the auction for the film rights. And I said, but my wishes, since always that the director will be Roman Polanski. What's happened to our producer, which I met? He got accident and he died. He had the accident during the production of the movies between Turkey and Greece, this John Daly. So he couldn't be part of our project, because my loyalty would be that we want to take him with us on this journey. But let's say, I said to Christopher Little, I want Roman Polanski to be the director, because I don't want a very good American director, you know, the son of the husband of the daughter of this one of the bosses of the big studio, and there will be another American movie like Schindler's List. This is not the story of the Holocaust. This is not the story of occupation of Poland. This is the story of German businessmen, very pleased and nice for Germany. That's why Steven Spielberg got very high cross in Germany for this movie, but this is not our story. This is not story of my country, this is not story of my nations. So I understood that Roman Polanski would be only one person in the world who is only possible to make this movie, because he was part of the story during the war.
Yes.
He's part of Polish nation. He understands what does it mean, how important are very small accents. when something would be wrong, not true, not authentic in this movie, there's a war in Poland between the people about this movie. This movie is we can all really say, it's a kind of short compendium of the history of the Second World War, and not only a Jewish but also a Polish nation, and how they did it together, and what's happened to them, and what's happened to our Warsaw.
And amazingly in all of this, it's also the story of one German officer who your father happens to meet out of sheer incredible chance. The one person who might be prepared to help him is the person he stumbles across.
He didn't kill him, it was the help.
So
it was the help enough.
I've heard that Polanski auditioned 1,000 actors for the role of your father and got to Adrien Brody. Now, I remember watching that film 20 years ago and being stunned by his performance. I thought he was incredible.
That's what his youngest Oscar winner in the history.
Exactly, and it won, of course, 3 Oscars, which is really quite impressive.
So he could kiss Halle Berry on the stage for it. Well, the Oscar producer had the big problem with it. The kiss in Hollywood cannot be longer than 9 seconds.
I did not know that.
So that is in the movies. Yeah, you can look at this.
What was it like on set with Brody, watching him play the role, but also your father? I mean, that's a quite an unusual dynamic to be in, to see that situation being made happening.
Do you want to know the truth?
Yes.
Okay, there is a director, Roman Polanski. If you are a piece of wood, you're the best actor also. Yes. That's why he got problems with the John Travolta, who ran out of the set after 1 day. Maybe after 3 days, I don't know exactly, but he ran away, and there was a big conflict of few or maybe even more $1 million. Because Roman Polanski, what I observed, is he knows very well the whole movie. When who would be transferable, he could play every part of the movie on his own. So he's coming, and he knows exactly what should happen, how it should be, and the actor must be the person who replaces what Polanski says. When you would see Polanski in the Amadeus here in Warsaw, who would understand that he's one of the best actors in the world. So he's showing the actor every movement, every expression, everything, and he knows it. And so in his movies, when you take a look on the history of this director, you will always see the ladies who are for the first time in the front of the camera, or who was unknown and without any importance. After the movie with Roman Polanski, they got one of the first. Look at Katrin Deneuve, look at Nastasia Kinski, look, many actors got the first time really discovered by Polanski, and sometimes it was the last movie they did. So show me the movie. He did a test with Nastasia Kinska, nominated almost, I think, to the Oscars, but she did nothing after that. Under Polanski, she could be a great actor because he's very extraordinary director. He can make you the greatest actor of the world in the front of the camera. Even you are not the greatest, but it is his work, his way of working, of transferring his artistic vision, and he's doing atmosphere on the plan. So the people are like, in a kind of hypnosis working for him. So he's getting such cooperation of whole extras on the plan.
Yes.
1,000 people coming at 5 o'clock in the morning working for him with love. And I have the contact to many people who are telling me 20 years ago, I was on the plan, you know. It is one of the most experiences of my life.
What was it like watching Brody as your father?
This is a very strange question, I tell you why. The problem is that I was believing that, first of all, this is most important movie coming out, one of the most important. Maybe I was feeling like a prophet, but I told Brody that he will get Oscar for this movie. And he could remember this very well. And after the Oscar ceremony, I told him, now it is your part to make the best of it.
So I think people would be interested, you know, you're watching Brody playing your father in these horrific scenes, for example, at the Umschlagplatz, where your father and his family are waiting for deportation to Treblinka.
Much more stronger was for me, and more importance was the scene when my father was dying of the yellow tractus problems in the house where we were today. On Aleja Niepodległości, he got sick and he got some help of the Polish doctor. And I saw Brody and say, my God, you will die too soon. How it is very bad with you.
He lost a lot of weight.
He looked like a sick man.
Yeah.
I didn't expect this is some of this characterization, but you know, he was very real in this what he did. But let me tell you, he was not my father.
Yes.
There's no way that I could make a mistake one day. No, but you know, he's a very nice, very warm, and very friendly, and it was a very good time together we spent. And I spent a lot of time with him because in the United States there was promotion of the movie to the Oscars, which takes, you know, presentations for the members of Academy. And we did it together, two of us. So I spent almost 1 year with Adrien, showing the movie and spending time together. So
he starved himself, I think, something like 30 pounds, about 15 kilos to
I forgot to ask him how to do it. I would love to do it now.
I remember in one interview, because I've been looking, obviously he said something, just ate a lot less. But
he sold his car, what I will not do.
He split up with his girlfriend. He went into isolation to prepare for the role, and then afterwards he said that he was left with a profound depression. And there were lots of media articles saying, where's Adrien Brody, because he's kind of disappeared off the scene.
You have to understand, if you are part of this business, every of us has to have this story. So if you are giving the interview during the Oscar promotion, I gave maybe sometimes 5-6 interviews on a day, and every one was different. You have to bring the story to the journalist, and he wants to have something special. So this story, I can't believe that Adrien was working and is preparing to this performance. But let's say the story is, of course, in some part the show. Some don't believe every word, but it sounds very well and nice. And I believe he did it. There's another story, I think. Another story is that Americans cannot even imagine what happened here. That's why this movie shocked Adrien. For sure he read the book as the first. He didn't understood the book as it is. He read it later, and he read the play, and it got more and more under the skin. And if you read the book in your native language, you will be killed just by this book. In the middle of the book you cannot read more, but you read it in one piece until then. And then, so I got reported by many people in Germany, after the scene on Umschlagplatz, I couldn't read anymore. I had to stop and to get some drink. This is a very strong book, and why this book is on the other side, very attractive, because my father was very amusing person. So he came from his tours and he delivered stories, short stories, always with the kind of point. And you know, the point is giving the point over the I. So you have this, you know, and when you read The Pianist, even you read the story of the man, of German officer, passing the Jewish boy who didn't say hello and he didn't took his cap from his head. So he took the pistol and killed him on the word and went away. And my father says, because he had many more important things to do. You know, this small sentence says everything about this story, which is so terrible and so strong and so cruel. Or this story when the many short stories in this book has this construction. This is because of the way my father saw the pictures. He delivered many pictures from this ghetto time and living as a small documents, but on the way which we today observe in the newspapers. The stories will be shorter, the title will be more important, so they are short stories. And 30 years ago there was so long articles. Today nobody is writing this short story, this, and this is the like collection of these pictures, which you see in the boulevard press. Short stories from the ghetto. And the 1,000 pictures. Every small story said. This is why Polanski said it is very difficult to make the movie of it. Even you, when you read, you see the pictures. They are very vivid and they are very strong, and they are so cruel. They have, as I say, some ending which is so giving you some place it's giving you the impressions and place to make your own thoughts about this, what you read. This is what is how the book is working on the reader. And the movie delivers ready pictures. You see what you see, you think what you see, and you go out of the cinema and you think what director wanted you to think. And this book is giving you a free room for your own thoughts, and you are finishing the book and you are thinking about what you wrote for years. Yep. And you are coming back to the stories, even small stories. You go through Warsaw and you see the places and you think, oh, this was in this book. And you live with the story much longer, because it is, you know, the frame is different. The movie is a very strong frame, and the book has not this frame. But I tell you, we get even more, because we already have created the play,
Broadway play. Yep.
And this is coming next year.
Is this the big project you were talking about,
yes,
Andrzej?
and
Good.
This story is, of course, got difficult because of our situation in the world. But let's say next year is coming out, and when it is what we expect, it will be all over the world, and it is not, you know, of importance. For me, it is important that one day it will be played in the schools as a year's, you know, finishing ceremony. They do the play, they show the plays, you know, they different things. I saw Blues Brothers in the school of my friends and whatever. I expect one day to see The Pianist. It's in such performance, not because it is a great Broadway. No, this school performance, first of all, has 11 people on the stage and 500 students in the school, and this is my audience. I don't want to get old people to see it. I want to get young people, our future. Because my idea, with this book was to tell German people what's happened in Poland. Just to let them know, to think about this, and hopefully one day to have better relations with Poles. This is what I expect from the same, from this play. For me, there was also the importance of this book very clear. There was no knowledge in the world about the relations between Jews and Poles before the war and during the war. So this book shows all the aspects, all the facets of this gray shadows of these relations. In the book of my father, you see the Poles helping Jews. The Poles maybe sometimes deliver Jews to the Germans. You see Germans, you see different Germans, terrible Germans as we know them, and one good German. This German, let's say, is not helping my father on this way as the Polish friends helped him, hiding him for years in one place, giving the flat and food and helping until the Warsaw Uprising. I don't want you to confuse the Warsaw Uprising with Jewish Uprising. I talk about the Warsaw Uprising, which was in 1944, where my father was in hiding on the German-controlled side of Warsaw. So the Polish friends couldn't help him anymore. So this was the German who gave him some food and didn't kill him. But in this book you see all these different informations or stories about this, what's happened between Poles and Jews. These Poles who helped him, risking their lives and lives on whole family. This is very important that today almost every member or every citizen living in New York knows the movie. I'm not asking from which society, from which group. They know the story. I think this is the first and last movie worldwide telling the story of Poland and of Warsaw. There is no other movie. You know American market and you know these relations very well. You cannot call the name of any movie which is so famous, so important. So we got it, and this is the first and maybe even last movie telling of the help which delivered Polish friends of my father and Polish supporters to him, risking their life. Who is telling the story? You know, they can go out and tell the story, but it is not such on the same way and the same level coming over to foreign people as it is coming from this movie. This is why this movie is also important. You know, I heard in Germany stories about Poles killing Jews. Everything can and could be possible during the war. The war is, and you know, is a time where some very different characters are coming up and shows their bad sides. But we cannot forget people helping, because it is last thing we owe to them. You know, we cannot make the victims vivid, and we cannot make these people vivid. They are already not there, but we cannot forget, because we cannot give them the prizes, we cannot give them the orders. Israel tries to remember them, so we have these names of the people who helped my father on the table there. But let's say we have to tell the story, because it is our obligation. We owe them this point. So this movie and this book is telling this story, and this is mostly authentic, and that's why they know it and they learn about these stories from this movie. So this terrible stories of telling about the Polish concentration camps, there's a big problem. But let's say this is more important than to carry for these errors in some press, because the people are going out of the cinema, they look at the movie and they know what happened really in Poland. This is so important for Poland, for Poles, and for Warsaw, and of course for the Jews, because it shows what's happened to them. So this movie is one of the most important, and I'm very happy that this is always presented as one of the most important movies in the world in IMDb. This is the movie is on the place, I think, 38, in the history of all films of the history. So it is very high. This is why I am so also satisfied of making and working on this and giving there's a part in it of me.
Yeah. Andrzej, your father lived long enough to know that the book had gone global or gone around the world.
2 years long.
How did he react to his sudden world fame?
No, my father was always famous.
Well, this edition of his world famous,
as a composer. When you have 700 songs and you have some movies and you have hits which is sung by whole country.
Yes.
You are famous on his own.
So to this element of his story,
this book was not of that importance. He told me always, leave it. It will not be interested for anybody. No one wants to go back to the story. And I said, no, it is important for me. And this is important for young people, and I want them to read it.
Yep.
Even we sell only 2,000 books. We have to do this because this will be in the libraries, and it will be known as a document. But you have your office, your patients, you have to concentrate on your work there and leave it. So, but as it came, my father came to Germany to do the reader travel. We met the readers in 30 places, and I remember the moments where the people was kneeling in front of him and kissing his hands in Germany, the visitors of this meeting with him, who read the book. So he saw that there is a reason to bring the book to the audience, not only because of these readers, but to try to find the answer on the question why the whole family of my father died. If it will be a reminder for the whole world that the war is something terrible, not for all, but it will be enough. It is one of the reasons to do it. So for me also.
And I think you mentioned the foreword to the edition that I have, that you and your father then talked a lot more about his experiences after the publication.
Yes, before the presentation of this book, I did a long interview with my father. I have it on tapes, and one day, in this time when we produced the play on Broadway, it will be a documentary which I will publish, but only in internet. I don't see any importance of TV stations anymore, but I believe that it will be that, like I placed a nocturne played by my father on internet, and during few years we got 12 million viewers.
Yeah. So
what kind of CD I should produce to get 12 million people to hear it?
Well, we're all a fan of that on Heart of Poland because we're 100% online. But I wonder, in the interviews that you have, I'm guessing there's a lot more of the story that wasn't in the book and I'm guessing isn't yet well known. So maybe some new surprises that will come out of the story.
You know, there is a lot of different and additional stories. If you imagine, there was a story of my father jumping from the roof on the fourth floor balcony, which is not in the book. But my father was running away of this tanks. I think no, the soldiers giving a shot on him on the roof. So this you find in the movie, and it was not in the book. Just as I told the story, the Roman, he just placed this in the movie immediately, and we didn't talk a lot about. The funny story is, 3 years before he got the script and the contract, I told him, you know, since 3 years I have your phone number in the pocket. Why didn't you call me? I said, because you wouldn't do this movie. And he said, you're right. I get 300 scripts a year. I don't do any movies. In such story, I have a feeling the story of this book, with all these people I met and who helped to do this book famous, you have a feeling like going with the tram without a driver through the city, and you don't know is he going to the left or to the right or straight, but on the end you dream of this tram to get to the to the right place which you expect or which you wish to have. I just, as a blind passenger, was taking some decisions. Should I go out or not? And you answer many questions. You decide 1,000 times. You meet such terrible people on this way, but in every moment you can make a mistake to trust to these people, and I didn't. That's why we have it all over the world, because I understood from my childhood, as I observed my father, how to deal with these things, with their author rights, with copyrights, with thanks God I did it on the right way, so that's why we have it. But this is really very difficult story, and that's why so many people are not doing this. I got an offer after we presented book in Germany from one of the biggest production companies in Germany, offering me 100,000 euro, which was a lot of money, from my publishing house, give them the rights to make the movie. And I said, no, why not? We don't need the next German movie about this time.
Yeah.
The Germans was the authors of the play, but we want a better director. So I didn't want to make any German movie. And my father said, how could you? This is so world famous company. I said, Papa, not a German movie, not with me. I prefer not to have no movie. So this is decisions you get, and you cannot sleep for a week. Everyone says, how could you? You will never get better offer. You will never do the movie. And I told to my agent, Christopher, I prefer to have no movie than the wrong one. But he told me no. And one day I got the contract with Roman Polanski, and he told me, be silent. First, when I sit in the premiere, in the first row, and I see the movie, I believe that there was one. I asked him, why, Christopher? Because, there's so many contracts done for the movie, and there was no movie.
Yeah.
Because there are many movies contracted, only not to make them.
Yeah.
Because the studio can make another movie on the same story or similar story or the story of the same time, and they don't want to have a concurrent. So they buy the book, and never do the movie.
Yeah.
It could happen to us.
Andrzej, we can be very grateful that all those years ago, the 13-year-old you picked that book up, because thanks to you and thanks more than anything else to your father, the world has been given a gift. It's a story that no one has been able to tell like your father, and it's unique, it's remarkable, it's moving, it's stayed with me as a person. It's been an enormous privilege to meet you today.
I am very happy because now the book is all over the world. It still will be still read, and one of the last productions or prints are in Arabic language in Saudi Arabia, and you know, this is what makes me maybe even satisfied of the work I did.
I think you can be satisfied. Andrzej Szpilman, thank you very much for joining us, and I think we should also pay homage to your wonderful dog Nella, who's been nice and calm on your arm.
She understands the importance of the thing.
She's been very well behaved, so we thank her very much. But more than anything else, we thank you for joining us on Heart of Poland. It's been an honour to meet you. Thank you very much. If you'd like to watch more fascinating stories with fascinating people leading fascinating lives and making fascinating things happen in and about the country of Poland, then I do invite you to visit Heart of Poland wherever you can find it, online on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and many other social media platforms, as well as, of course, on thefirstnews.com. This meeting with Andrzej has been something we've been trying to put together for quite a while. It's been a privilege to meet with him and hear this story. It's a unique and remarkable story, but we have many other remarkable stories. We've talked to, for example, Barbara Wojnarowska, who as a young girl was in Auschwitz and was the patient of Dr. Joseph Mengele. We've talked with survivors of the Warsaw Uprising, and of course we talked with artists and authors and poets and change makers doing many other things looking beyond Polish history. If you're interested in Poland, if you love Poland, if you want to find out more about Poland, then I can really recommend doing only one thing, which is to look at Heart of Poland. It's the story where we look at the impossible journey to find the heart of Poland. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again for another episode of Heart of Poland.